Welcome to the Polished Mind, where subtle behaviors reveal powerful truths. Let's dive in.
If someone introduces these kinds of topics in a conversation, chances are they're operating on a higher cognitive level. There's something captivating about people who naturally steer conversations toward deeper waters. One might not notice it at first, but suddenly the discussion shifts from casual banter to something that feels almost electric, something that demands more than nodding and smiling. These individuals don't settle for surface-level dialogue. Instead, they bring a mental spark, gently challenging others to think, reflect, and grow. A story comes to mind about someone who once met a friend at a coffee shop. What began as a typical brunch quickly transformed into a fascinating dive into the nature of consciousness. It wasn't rehearsed or dramatic, just a curious mind effortlessly pulling others into a thought-provoking journey. That's the hallmark of a high-level thinker. They ignite the kind of discussion that feels more like cave exploration than casual chatting. You walk away from the encounter not just entertained, but expanded. So how can you tell when you're speaking with a high-level thinker? Watch for these signs. Number 1, they talk about paradoxes and contradictions. High-level thinkers are often drawn to topics that defy simple explanations. They revel in the paradoxes, concepts that seem contradictory yet coexist. These are the people who enjoy wrestling with complexity, refusing to reduce life into black and white answers. Someone once met an individual fascinated by Schrödinger's cat, the famous quantum mechanics thought experiment in which a cat exists in two contradictory states, alive and dead, until observed. It may sound bizarre, but it's a genuine model for understanding the layers of reality. That person used it as a jumping-off point to question classical perceptions of the universe, making a compelling case for how seemingly conflicting truths can exist simultaneously. They're also intrigued by ethical dilemmas, asking, for instance, if it's ever justifiable to commit a wrong act for the greater good. Rather than seeking binary answers, they peel back the layers, exposing how our values are often challenged by nuance. Philosophers often argue that real wisdom comes from tolerating contradiction, and high-level thinkers embody this by willingly holding two opposing ideas in tension. Number 2, they question reality and perception. Another major clue is their tendency to question how we perceive the world. They don't merely accept reality at face value. They dissect it, examining the very lenses through which humans interpret their surroundings. One such person would often raise questions like, "Is your red the same as mine?" A simple but powerful way to unsettle the assumptions people take for granted. These aren't idle musings, they're rooted in a desire to understand the subjectivity of perception. They might reference concepts like cognitive dissonance, that psychological tension between belief and evidence, to illustrate how human minds can deceive even themselves. This line of thought isn't abstract for them. It's about realizing that what we see might be shaped more by our minds than by objective reality. There was also a friend who once joked that maybe everyone was dreaming, that life itself might be an illusion. It could have been dismissed as stoner humor, except that it came backed with references to neuroscience and ancient philosophy. Suddenly, what seemed like a joke became a meaningful inquiry into the very fabric of existence. Number 3, they explore human behavior and hidden motivations. High-level thinkers have a deep interest in understanding why people behave the way they do. They often introduce terms like the Dunning-Kruger effect, which explains how those with limited knowledge sometimes overestimate their competence. But they don't use these terms to sound impressive. They're genuinely curious about the psychology behind human action. These are the kinds of individuals who, in social settings, pick up on subtle cues others miss. They connect the dots between behavior, culture, and history. Conversations with them often touch on phenomena like groupthink, how communities can adopt flawed beliefs en masse, or confirmation bias, which warps our ability to see the world objectively. One person once reflected on a discussion involving subtle behavioral patterns and their influence on society. It was like watching someone pull back the curtain on a magic trick, revealing the mechanics behind human tendencies. After such conversations, it becomes hard to return to a simplified view of people and their motivations. Number 4, they connect everyday moments to bigger ideas. A distinguishing trait of a high-level thinker is the ability to draw profound meaning from ordinary events. They don't need a grand stage or formal setting to think deeply. Even the smallest moment can spark insight. For example, someone once talked about their daughter's fascination with crayons. What began as a light-hearted observation became a doorway into a discussion about childhood creativity and its impact on problem-solving skills in adulthood. That brief comment snowballed into a deeper critique of how modern educational systems suppress imagination in favor of standardized learning. This ability to trace the threads of big ideas through the fabric of daily life is like having intellectual X-ray vision. These people live in a constant state of inquiry, applying philosophy and insight to real-world experiences, not just abstract theory. They remind us that every passing moment is part of something much larger. Final thoughts. Engaging with a high-level thinker isn't just about being mentally stimulated, it's about transformation. These individuals expand the boundaries of ordinary thought. They don't need credentials or degrees to do it. They simply think in ways that challenge norms and invite others into new dimensions of awareness. They ask questions that upend conventional beliefs, embrace contradictions that reveal complexity, explore the motives that drive human behavior, and find profound meaning in the seemingly mundane. When in conversation with such a person, one often walks away changed, not because of how much they knew, but because of how deeply they saw. The real gift of these thinkers is not knowledge, but illumination. Talking to them is like lighting a candle in a dark room. Once it's lit, the world is never quite the same. So the next time someone casually shifts a conversation into deeper waters, lean in. You may be standing at the threshold of a mental journey. High-level thinkers don't just talk. They guide, inspire, and most importantly, expand the minds of those willing to go along for the ride.
Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay sharp, stay polished.